funny, when you're young, you just think you're so bulletproof.
Like all young men, you think you're impervious to what's going to happen to you, and just think, it's never going to happen to me.
So when I was younger, working with the tools, you were a sissy if you asked for safety gear. Because we had to have the first aid kit and it had to be checked off that it was there. So if you actually took something from it, they'd have to replenish it. So you were encouraged not to grab anything from the safety kit.
My concern was that if I was going to put earplugs in, that would classify me as a sissy. Iron workers are not sissies, so I didn't wear a hearing protection.
Hearing protection was not anything on our radar in the early 80s. And hearing loss is something that develops over time, little by little, that you don't notice, and it can't be corrected.
I'd be up on a ladder pretty much all day long with a rotohammer drilling 1.5-inch holes through 6 inches of concrete, 10 inches of concrete, 3 inches of brick, whatever it was, and it was just pretty much all day, and next day we'd show up and do the same thing again.
And ironwork, there's a lot of noise that goes on. There's pounding on the iron. There's rattle guns where you rattle up the bolts, and there's air arcing going on.
Everything from shooting firearms to being on the job site, where there was chop saws running or somebody's firing off a powered actuated tool.
I worked on job sites where all kinds of different construction is going on at the same time. If you're watching this and you work construction, you know exactly what I mean. And forklifts and people working with rotohammers, cutting steel. There's just a lot going on and a lot of noises.
Basically, my biggest thing is, especially as an instructor in the school, if I get 1 or 2 conversations going at the same time, I lose too much background noise. I can't understand what somebody is saying. I really have to focus. A lot of times when somebody's speaking to me in a crowd, I have to almost read lips because the background noise really plays with me with the ringing in the ears and whatnot.
It's a great impact on my life. When you're asking someone to repeat themselves, what they are immediately is a little annoyed. And so the tone changes, the tone of the conversation changes.
The average, I'm about average until you get to high decibel, low frequency, and my hearing drops off the chart. And that's voices. That's voices, especially women's voices. So when I'm in crowded rooms, I can't hear the person in front of me talking, but I can hear someone sounds like they're right behind me. They could be half a room away.
I never wore hearing protection until the point the doctor told me that this was cumulative. It could get worse if I didn't protect my hearing. So I started wearing my earplugs. I started protecting myself, and my hearing hasn't degraded any further. But it does not get better. It stays the way it is.
Today, I suffer from 85% hearing loss. I wear 2 hearing aids. And as my hearing started to dissipate, my wife would tell me something, and I'd think I'd hear it, and I didn't hear it, and I wouldn't do it, and she'd question me why I didn't do it. My employer would give me directions on how to do a project. I would do the project, and there were some things I missed because I didn't understand what he was saying, but I was too embarrassed to ask him to repeat it.
So there were a lot of sounds that had disappeared over time that I never really realized because it was so gradual.
My wife says I have selective hearing. I hear what I want to hear.
And hearing loss is something that affects the person with the hearing loss, and it affects everybody they interact with.
Okay, when I was a kid, my grandfather, who had been an ironworker for almost 50 years, he worked in Chicago in 1927 driving rivets, and there was never any thought of trying to protect your ears. And when I was leaving to come to America, he pulled me to the side and he said, "Listen, son," he said, nobody ever told me how to protect my ears, and it was a thing that nobody did, but you got to protect your hearing. He said, if you're inside a bridge or something, the guys are tightening the bolts on the other side and all the noise is hidden and you're inside and one of your earplugs falls out, he says, you take a $20 bill and chew it up and stick it in your ear, he says, because that's the cheapest thing you could do. He says, protect those ears. He said, and the problem is, he said, I'm old. I'm 80 years old, and I can't hear what people are saying, and I hear, you know, muffled noises, and I'm not sure what the conversation is, and I smile at the wrong time, or I frown at the wrong time, and because you're old, they think your mind's going, and people isolate you. They stay away from you, or they, you know, stop inviting you places, and you end up isolated on your own. You're looking at a TV that you can't hear, and it really has a detrimental effect on your years of retirement, and isolates you in a way that most people wouldn't understand.
Work with your fingers in your ears, so put earplugs in.
You know, wear hearing protection. You know, people may laugh at you. You know, people may call you a sissy on the job site because they're not wearing it. But be the one that when you're 50 years old or above, you have your hearing.
This hearing protection is provided by the contractors. Wear it. Do yourself a favor. I wear 2 hearing aids today because of my lack of being responsible and taking and protecting my hearing.
You can't find a job now where there's not at least earplugs in the tool gang box for you to wear. It's not mandatory yet, like a hard hat or safety glasses. A lot of jobs do require you to wear them. I will be glad when it's 100% of the jobs demand that you wear hearing protection.
Protecting your hearing is really an investment in the quality of the rest of your life.